Somewhere you find that a person look at the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. And we are at that segment where we bring you all the headlines from the major newspapers across the country. And as usual, we would begin with the Daily Trust. And the major headline here reads, Presidential poll, Atiku Obi heads to court as Tinubu pledges fairness. NNPP demands cancellation as Siwaju visits Buhari in Daura. UK Prime Minister Oshibanjo, IBB, ACF congratulate President-elect. You'll find the details of the story on page 4. And of course, you'll find there as the major front page picture, the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu displays his certificate of return while INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu on his left and the wife of the President-elect Mrs. Oluremi Tinubu looks on. Very funny, yesterday I was looking at a newspaper that did an analysis and said wife of the president. No, they described her as the first lady elect, and I was wondering if I had any such election. But clearly you can see the wife there stressed down completely from what has been an epic battle in the annals of our political history. And to the second major headline there on the Daily Trust front page, court remands reps leader Dogua over mother arson, and police detain Kano NNPP rep-elect over firearm possession. You'll find the details of the story on page 38. And to other stories on the front page, senators fought Lawan's claim on e-results transmission. And Nigeria's oil production recount rose in January OPEC. And analysis for salient parts to Tinubu's victory. 32 states may witness flood this year. That is coming from NISA. And Lagos police warns against fake security alert. And of course, the final story there on the front page, farmers lament as irrigation activity grounded. These are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust.
All right, the next newspaper we're looking at is the Nigerian Tribune, and it carries this major story on the front page. I will work to make Nigeria better. That is according to Tinubu, and has writers here that say seeks reconciliation with Atiku, Obi, others, as INEC represents a certificate of return to him and Shetima. Buhari, IBB, Lawan, governors, others congratulate the president-elect. Details of that story can be found on page 3. Moving down towards the bottom of the front page there, we will retrieve our mandate. That's Atiku Akua campaign vows. Labour Party to fight the injustice. Vice presidential candidate. Ohanes Ndigbo rejects 2023 presidential election results. Details of that story are on page 2 and 8. The news belt there carries stories like Maiduguri Monday market fire. Police arrest 50 suspects for alleged looting. Federal Executive Council okays $61.5 million and $116.13 billion for power contracts award. And herdsmen invade Ondo communities, destroy farms, injure farmers, and that is on page 29. Moving towards the top of the front page there, above the nameplate, CSOs demand audit report of 2023 presidential and National Assembly elections. Conservative no confidence in electoral process adopted by INEC. Details can be found on page 8. And finally, on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, alleged homicide. Rep Majority Leader Dogwa to be remanded in prison. And you can find that story on page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune.
And we move on to the New Telegraph. We will be skipping some of the stories that had been taken by other papers we reviewed this morning. But just quickly, Presidency, Tinubu receives certificate of return, urges Nigeria to shed artificial restrictions of bias, prejudice. Says he received goodwill message from President Macron. Polls outcome shows democracy ripening, Buhari. And your progressive welfareist ideals needed now, Oshibanjo cancels. IBB, Lawan, Gbajabiamila, Kalu, Governor Oni, YCE, others facilitate with President-elect as APC Governor Forum made Tinubu's presidency a reality, says Akero Dolu. And to other stories there, on the top of, right above the name marks there, we have full year 2022, Tier 2 bank customers deposit rise to 20.07% to 8.60 trillion. CBN to issue 1.1 trillion treasury bills in Q2 2023. And to other stories there, polls results, disquiet, protest in Abuja, Edo, others. Study links artificial sweeteners to heart attack, stroke. You find the details of that on page 27. And polls, challenges not enough to invalidate results. This is coming from Buhari. Expect another severe flooding. This is coming from the National Emergency Management Agency's DG. And to other story, reps applaud Buhari on national security reform. APC victory, Port Harcourt voters vow to repay PDP in Gubo polls. Alleged attempts to hack into INEC server should be probed. And this is coming from Femi Falana. These are the major stories on the front page of the New Telegraph.
Next, we take a look at the Daily Independent newspaper. This is the major story on the front page. Tinubu seeks support, says he's servant of larger purpose. And Riders here says urges the aggrieved to shun violence, seek legal recourse. Leads APC Governors Party Chair on a thank you visit to Buhari. UK Prime Minister congratulates Tinubu on electoral victory. Yakase asks President-elect to embrace all Nigerians. The details can be found on page 29. The News Belt carries these stories. Protests in Abuja over alleged manipulation of 2023 general election. That's on page 7. And 2023 elections, police in Kaduna ban celebrations, rallies. That is on page 6. Court remands Reps Majority Leader Dogwa on page 6. And alleged 109 billion naira fraud, former Accountant General's missing statement stalls trial. Presidential election will fight injustice done to Nigerians, as Tatibaba Ahmed assures and berates Lawan over comments on e-transmission of results. At the very bottom of the front page there, Masari beats Buhari, optimistic of Katsina Guba poll outcome. And at the very top of the front page there, Yaga Africa falls INEC on Rivers, Imo presidential poll results. And 2023 election, this grave injustice shall not stand. That is according to Atiku's aide. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Independent this morning.
Moving on to the Leadership newspaper this morning, still staying with politics. Tinubu seek Atiku Obi other supports for greater Nigeria. And to other stories, assemble your economic team now, experts tell Tinubu. And to other stories, how foreign press reported Tinubu's declaration. Why presidential poll will affect governorship assembly elections. And Borno market fire, police arrests 50 for looting. To other stories, thugs attack Sokoto PDP campaign office. And Kanu killing Dogwa arranged, sent to prison. Osibajo urged collective action against insecurity and coups. These are the major stories on the front page of the Leadership newspaper this morning.
All right, next we'll take a look at the Guardian newspaper. And in keeping what we have seen so far, the major story reads, Tinubu extends olive branch, invites youth to rescue Nigeria. And it comes with lots of riders here. Yaga Africa contradicts INEC on Rivers Imo results. We've lost confidence in INEC, a situation room declares. Protesters storm Abuja, Unity Fountain, and Niger demand fresh election. Buhari losers should take their grievances to court, not streets. APC set up committee to meet aggrieved presidential candidates. Your attributes needed all this time. Osinbajo congratulates Tinubu. Obi breaks silence, promises to address Nigerians. Detti vows to use legal means to reclaim mandate, tackles Lawan for trying to rewrite Electoral Act. Now, these are the riders supporting the major story on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Moving towards the top of the front page there, below the nameplate, INEC dashed hopes of Nigerians, Christian Coalition alleges. And Tinubu task on APC overhaul inclusive administration. That is another story on page 4. Election results collated in people's homes, says LP chieftain alleges. And that is on page 7. And at the very bottom of the front page there, TUC deplores presidential poll results as NLC greets elected LP lawmakers. That is on page 4. Akoti Oduagon, PDP rejects Kogi Kebbi senatorial results. And that is on page 29. These are the major stories on the front page of the Guardian newspaper.
And moving on to the Punch newspaper this morning, still staying with electoral results. Tinubu woes Atiku Obi as parties reject results. And moving on to other stories on the front page. Obi, the trader who changed the game. You'll find the details of that story on page 12. And Emilio Khan, the kingmaker who became king. That will be another interesting read, and you'll find the details of that on page 7. To other stories, bank assets rise to 73 trillion, Central Bank of Nigeria, and grants Nigeria's visas on arrival, FG tells India. Marketers to sanction depot filling stations overpricing fuel. You'll find the details of that on page 19. And of course, you'll find the map there as provided by the Punch newspapers showing the states that were won by each candidate. But what's important in this map is that it is now beginning to look like a multicolor, a rainbow kind of map, other than what we used to have, which was largely a dot of two colors. Interesting times for Nigeria politics, if you like. These are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
Next, we'll take a look at the business day, and this is the major story on the front page. March 11th, eyes on Lagos, others as battlegrounds shift. And Tinubu's 6 trillion naira challenge is another story on the front page of Business Day. Labour Party heads to court, and extortion remains threats to Apapa call-up system 2 years after. FX crisis, how next president can restore investor confidence. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Business Day newspaper.
That is the last paper for us in the studios. Now joining us, we have to look at the papers and provide us perspective is the editor-in-chief Deadline newspaper, Malen Nasrallah. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Good to be here indeed.
Yeah.
It's been a long and tiring week for everybody, especially for people who hold the system to account. Every minute we've had our eyes on the ball until the announcement of the result yesterday. Before we go into the papers, I would like to dig deep into your mind or your mind eye, if you like. How did you see the elections generally?
Well, I am not happy, that so many people didn't turn out for the election, and so many factors are actually responsible for that. If you maybe listen to all the analysts and observers, I expected Nigerians, seeing the current situation in the country, to come out en masse, to be able to take part in this exercise. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So I was a bit disappointed by the turnout. And somehow, the introduction of technology has sort of I wouldn't say sanitized the system, but it has reduced the incidences of, things that we cannot account for. We no longer see that. If you look at what happened in 1999 or 2003, for instance, the turnout, even though you had fewer voters at that time, was like 70 or 80%. And because there was no technology, there is no way you will be able to know whether the numbers that we give, was actually a reflection of the reality. Because in the end, we ended up with, Michael Jackson, Mandela on the voters register. But now that we have introduced technology, that seems to be going down significantly.
Interesting lessons there from Nigeria's election, and the papers seem to capture all of these developments. Just before we move into the papers, like you said, taking a cue from you, I'd mentioned, like somebody who is interested in numbers, that in fairness, this election did not fail to show by the majority vote, and these I don't mean votes that are going to the party, that more than 2/3 of the people who voted in this election actually expressed their grievances with this administration. So the winner won with about 8 million votes, 8.5 million votes if you like, but the combined votes generally, including those that were cancelled because of irregularity, amounted to about 14 million. That is a referendum on this administration. Certainly. However you look at it, even though that 40 million did not go to a single candidate to suggest a change of party, but it's a message that anybody who has a match, or rather, that the president-elect should be looking at critically and begin a healing process that would sort of bestow confidence on his leadership. Daily Trust, among several other papers today, are reporting that Atiku and Obi are heading to court while Tinubu pledges fairness on his visit to Daura. What should we, given the kind of disaffection, clearly we have seen that those who lost are really mourning their losses, and those who won seem to be celebrating. But what would be your message to the president-elect at this time, considering how critical elections and emotional elections can be in Nigeria?
Well, I like the conciliatory, approach that he has so far adopted, because, like you said, for an election where you have the participation of almost 25 million people, and then you have close to 15 million actually, not voting for you, that says a lot. And if maybe the opposition, had put its house in order, probably wouldn't be talking about your emergence as president. That's so right. It's good to respect the views of those who did not vote for you, so that
who are in the majority by the way.
Yes, right from the beginning, you will now try to bring them on board, so that even the candidates that you contested against, will now understand. Since what we are talking about is the fact that we want the development of Nigeria, all the candidates, that seems to be their message, that they want to, play a role in the development of Nigeria. And there are so many ways you can actually do that without necessarily becoming the president. But unless the president gives you the opportunity to be on board, there is a limit to what you can actually do. So I expect the president-elect to use all the resources at his disposal to see that, he has convinced all the major players, or all the players, if you like, to be on board, so that in the end, the whole of Nigeria, which is now his constituency, will be the beneficiary for it.
Well, it has become sort of a ritual when it comes to elections in Nigeria, that after the elections, the winner is declared, whoever loses sings the same song. When will we ever get past this, a situation whereby people actually accept election results for what they are, not singing the same song all the time? Because this was something that we expected. Because even before the elections were held, a lot of people said, if we did not win, that means it was wrong.
Yeah.
You understand? So we are actually expecting this, but when will we be able to see past this? When can we get to that level of political maturity, to get to that level whereby elections will be held and everybody will accept the results to a certain degree?
I think it boils down to the fairness, and then the transparency in the system. If all Nigerians can see clearly, that the election was transparent, the election did not unnecessarily give undue advantage to any of the players, then you may not even have a reason to go to court in the end. But right now, you can see, because of so many challenges, what we were told about the beavers and then what we ended up getting, are two different things. And these are things that, people will use to make their case heard. And the fact that so many people believe that as far as election is concerned in Nigeria, those who did not rig actually are those who couldn't have the opportunity. Wherever you think you have the majority, or you have the major support, people tend to try to manipulate the system to see what advantage they can actually give to themselves. So like I said, if we can enhance the transparency of the system, so that even from the beginning you will know that you don't stand a chance even if you go to court, because everything was done transparently in a manner that nobody can get an opportunity to contest. So if you are able to do that, believe me, we'll begin to see lesser and lesser incidences of the candidates going to court. I remember the former president once said, that no matter how credible you think an election is in Nigeria, it will be disputed. So for it to be disputed is not the problem. The problem will be if people have a good reason to actually dispute the election. But without valid reasons, then Nigerians will see and act accordingly.
Interesting. Before there seems to be so much on the elections. I'm sorry we have to stay a bit longer on it. The elections are not over. Another critical part of this election will be the governorship and house. That's one place where we had barely gotten it right since this democracy. We have had governors who are emperors, who profess democracy by mouth, but in actual conduct, they are Caesars of some sorts. And with all of the challenges that we have seen, what would you say INEC should be doing with regards to building confidence in the system? Otherwise, if we complain about a voter party with 25 million, we are likely to see even less than 20 million for the governorship elections.
Well, you know, INEC as an institution, of course, has its own rule, you know, constitutionally defined. But it's not the only stakeholder in this exercise. Even the politicians themselves, you can see what is happening in so many places, you know, politicians trying to change the will of the people. And what can the electoral body do? The security, you know, maintenance of security and what have you, is not its responsibility. Its responsibility is to be able to do its role, you know, satisfactorily without like allowing undue interference either from within or from without. But like you said, if we look at the outcome of the presidential election, then we can say without any fear of contradiction that what is likely to happen, you know, in the states may not be significantly different. And I'm happy that, you know, not all the states are having the governorship election. Of course, the state assemblies, you know, it's going to be across all the states. But in Abuja, there wouldn't be election on March 11 because they don't have any state legislature or
so we cannot deploy as observers.
Yeah, so maybe what we should do, the number of security that we have left, we can now deploy them to the critical states,
especially
because
places that have shown flashes of violence.
Right from the beginning, the police actually said that they mentioned Kano, they mentioned the rivers, Lagos. And somehow they seem to be right on their projections, because see what happened in Kano. So many people were, you know, burnt. And you can see even the majority leader of the House of Reps.
Speak to that. I saw videos that were very terrible.
Very terrible.
Direct incitement of people and saying, I mean, those words are not something we can even repeat on TV. For a House leader, you have benefited from this process for a very long time. Why are you afraid of competition if you have shown proper representation? And I mean, to get your perspective on this, the police seem to have acted decisively and promptly on this case. Shouldn't we be seeing the police replicate this kind? Because we saw similar things in Lagos, in Rivers. I mean, shouldn't we be seeing more of this proactiveness from the police? Yeah,
well, maybe because we even failed in the past. You know, if we had succeeded in making an example, you know, with one of the major players, things like this wouldn't have, you know, happened. Because without peace, you know, even if you succeed, at the end of the day, who will you be representing? If all the people that you think are not with you, you know, the only thing you can do is to be able to like get back at them, and then, you know, honestly, I congratulate the police, you know, for taking a very decisive action this time around, and I hope they will be able to like pursue it to a logical conclusion, so that not only in Kano, in all the places where we had cases of violence, you know, politicians failing to do the right thing, you know, we'll like end up with a very good example, so that which will serve as deterrent to all those who will think the only thing to do in election is either you get your way or no way at all. And this is quite unfortunate, and like I said earlier, I will hope that the police will take it to a logical conclusion.
All right, now away from the noise of the elections and of course the election results and the fallout and everything like that, in between all that, there was a report or projection that was actually made that 32 states may actually witness floods this year, which is quite alarming when you look at the number. I mean, like 32 out of 36 states it's huge. It's a huge number, and at this point, you will assume that we will be talking about measures that are being put in place to forestall that. But we're just talking about it. That there will be flooding, rains will come early this year, and all that. And we're just talking about it, but we're not doing anything. And we're folding our arms right now, waiting for it to happen, and then we'll act surprised at the end of the day. How long are we going to continue to do this?
Actually, when I saw the report, the first thing that came to my mind, I said, well, this is the whole of Nigeria. If you are talking about 32 states,
exactly,
it means even if you wouldn't be affected directly, you know, either with displaced people, you know, you will be affected in one way or the other, because 32 states, you know, and like you said, this is an opportunity for all those who have a role to play, you know, to do the right thing. We shouldn't wait until the act, you know, happens that we now start, you know, going from pillar to post, trying to see what we can do. And somehow our disaster, you know, management agencies, I don't know, but it seems they are more interested in coming up with relief items at the end of it, you know, and what do they do? Sometimes it's just for the benefit of those who will get the contracts. Some are actually waiting for situations like this, so that they will have 1 or 2 contracts to execute. But the people should hold all the authorities to account. We shouldn't wait, you know, until maybe the disaster is upon us that we now start thinking of what to do. Since we have been warned, you know, at a very good time, so to say, we should try and see how we can try to minimize, if not stop the disaster completely from happening.
You know, talking about these rainfalls, you recall, Ibrahim, we had the DG of the NIMET telling us that even in their simulations, they can tell you the hour and the day that this flood will reach certain places, what level the water would rise. If we had serious governments or governance at the local level, they should have been looking at those simulations and telling people, you shouldn't be living here by XYZ time. Or we have opened a camp for some kind of relief, or in planting, it will be a waste if you do this because you will lose them to the flood, or these are drought-resistant varieties that we have developed. Is it that these leaders don't understand these things? Or in our own case this year, because the election means more to them than any other thing, they seem to be distracted, or that even as citizens, we have lost our compass such that elections where we are not participating seem to get us more emotionally engaged than questioning the quality of healthcare, of education, of inactions like this that could impact our life. Where exactly does the problem lie with us?
Well, you know, sometimes even for the people, we find it difficult to take all these things into like consideration. You have a government agency coming out to tell you these important things, but in the end, we wouldn't. In fact, so many people don't even know of the existence of all this advice we are talking about, because their maybe concern is completely about something different. So if we know this is the time that we are likely to have this, why don't we start like clearing the waterways, you know, doing all the little things we can from the beginning, so that in the end, even if the disaster is here, we will be able to lessen, mitigate the impact. But the authorities will say one thing, and then those who are expected to implement will not be doing it. So in the end, you don't even know what to do. Like I was coming here, you know, you saw so many water channels, like all these manholes and what have you, stuffed with
Polythene bags.
refuse, you know, and then what do we expect? If we have succeeded in blocking the waterways, then in the end, if the floods should come, then we'll end up with water in our homes, and that shouldn't be something that.
Well, I said, water no get enemy, or how did he? Water will find its level at the end of the day. We'll take a short break. When we return, the show will continue.
But in a situation where you find that a particular look like this,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that